Hey guys. All right. So this book isn't very big at all, but yeah, it's a quick read. I probably could read this in a day. But anyways, I just wanted to show you this. So this came out, I think it was last year, and they identified a new victim of Herb Baumeister. This is him.
We have a major update today on the Fox Hollow Farm case involving suspected Indiana serial killer Herb Baumeister.
How is he suspected? Can someone explain that to me? It's clear to me that he did that. There was witnesses. There was a survivor. I don't know.
A new victim has been identified from human remains found on his former Westfield property. Jenny Runovich is here now with this exclusive reporting. And Jenny, the coroner says this victim was completely unknown to them?
Yeah, for sure. They hadn't even had him reported missing.
Oh.
He wasn't on their radar. His name had never come up in this case. But forensic genealogy is what confirmed his identity from remains found at Fox Hollow Farm. So now another victim has a name. So we'll show you his picture. This is Daniel Thomas Halloran. He was born in 1972. It is still unclear exactly when he died, when he was murdered, but his remains found at Fox Hollow Farm in Westfield were just identified through Othram Laboratories with advanced forensic genealogy. The Hamilton County coroner says once they got his identity, the confirmation process was challenging. Halloran's mother, brother, and father are all dead. They need a relative to compare DNA. Well, then they discovered his mom had died of an overdose in Marion County, and that led to a match.
So we contacted the Marion County Coroner's Office, and they were able to provide us with a bloodstain card, a DNA card from the mother. And we were able then to do the comparison of the DNA from the remain to the mother's DNA and lock in that identification with you.
So remember, Coroner Jeff Jellison is doing this not just for the case closure, but for those families who've waited decades. And even though at first it looked like Daniel Halloran, this latest victim, that his relatives had all passed away, the coroner recently discovered that he actually has a daughter.
What?
She never knew her dad. He left in the early 1990s when she was still a toddler. So tonight at 6 o'clock, you will hear from her.
What?
She
I wanna
just
see
learned
that.
about this discovery, just learned that her dad was found, but also the likely victim of a serial killer.
This case is so chilling. It boggles the mind. Do we know how many victims?
Well,
Over
with
20?
Daniel Halloran, there now have been 10 positively identified human remains on that property. 10 people, but remember, 10,000 bones and bone fragments. Also, the coroner did tell me today they have 3 new DNA profiles of 3 more people. They're just waiting to confirm names.
Yeah, it's just like, look at the ripple effects of all of this.
It's chilling.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
Oh my god, you see this freaking guy? His name is Mark Goodyear. I haven't seen much on him except for his face, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? He's some weirdo. And then I saw that he was linked to Fox Hollow Farm, and I'm like, so he's the survivor. So this man, Mark Goodyear, is claiming he's a survivor, but then he's also claiming that he helped Herb Baumeister. I'm going to have to link this guy's video because it all came out on a docuseries on Hulu, which I don't have. And it was called Fox Hollow Murders. And it was like 4 episodes. And this guy was on it. And he's like not right. He's crazy. Like he's, I don't know. Yeah, he's not normal. There's something very wrong with him. And I've seen bits and parts of this video. And I mean, it just kind of gave me chills. Like this guy definitely, I think, was involved somehow. I don't think he was a victim. I think maybe at first he might have been a victim. And then he started to enjoy it and he helped. Oh, that's so gross. All right, this one's called Herb Did It. So when the producers of the TV show Ghost Adventures, oh, for fuck's sake, I do not like that Zach Bagan at all. He's an idiot. Why the hell would you let him come there? Sorry, I didn't know that they were there. Really? So apparently when the producers of the TV show Ghost Adventures contacted us and asked to shoot an episode at Fox Hollow Farm, Vicky and I talked about it and we ultimately agreed to let them come. It's an interesting show in which a small group of paranormal investigators spend several days investigating a haunted location and fake everything. And trying to gather evidence to help document proof of the haunting. Although Ghost Adventures is often a dramatic and flamboyant show, known for its provocative approach to the paranormal, we thought that perhaps host Zach Baggins and his crew of investigators might get some more answers concerning the spirits that haunted our home. Well, you done fucked up, because I guarantee it was all of it was all lies. The cast and crew were all very friendly and approachable, even agreeing to let our son appear in one of the dramatized segments, portraying a dark spirit. Oh, that's nice. He had a lot of fun getting dressed up and shooting his scenes. Zach Baggins floated the theory that I have some kind of deep connection to Herb Baumeister. Of course he fucking did. Which may be true to some degree. I certainly believe that I have felt his presence around the house on more than one occasion. Duh, you're living in his home. But I do not believe that he is capable of influencing my behavior or manner of thinking. Ghost Adventures often claims to find spirits that are dark attachments when they visit haunted locations, and Zach believed that my own attachment was none other than Herb himself, based on my mannerisms and so forth. I'm irritated now. I can't take that guy seriously. Well, I respect Zach's opinion in this case. I think that we're just going to have to agree to disagree. Oh, thank frig. Okay, good. Good boy. When the time came for the investigative portion of the TV shoot, we turned the keys over to Zach and the whole family spent the night in a hotel. Vicky and I were intrigued to see what results and evidence the Ghost Adventures team would come up with during their lockdown at Fox Hollow Farm. The investigation, this home, has me on edge unlike any other because I cannot believe the house is still there, Zach said. Of course, motherfucker. Before things had even gotten started, they began with a bang, literally. A loud bang was heard and recorded, coming from the pool room, which was empty at the time. Oh, I friggin' bet. The three investigators wasted no time provoking Herb, like a fucking idiot, letting him know in no uncertain terms that they thought of him and the things he had done. Zach claimed to see a white mist in the game room adjacent to the pool. Of course he did. When they replayed the audio recording of the conversation, a man's voice could clearly be heard saying the word help. An A-class EVP. Zach asked whether this was the voice of one of the murdered victims, asking for help, or if it could have been even Herb Baumeister himself. A very astute question indeed. Next, they broke out an SB7 spirit box. I don't know what the hell that is. This device, basically a radio scanner that jumps from frequency to frequency. It is believed by some to allow disembodied entities to speak on the living in real time, answering their questions directly. Okay, so they call it a spirit box, a ghost box, and what it is like a radio, and it flips stations on its own, and you're supposed to take the words that you hear and make them into a sentence or whatever you're trying to fabricate. But anyways. Unfortunately, the words sound garbled and are easy to misinterpret. Exactly. Spirit boxes are very prone to the phenomenon of audio pareidolia, the innate desire of the brain to make sense of random noises. But at the same time, they can also produce some very impressive results. Yeah, I don't believe that. No. When Zach requested that the spirit they were trying to contact tell him their name, a voice came through the SB7 and seemed to say the words, "I'm dead." This was a much clearer voice than the one that followed, an answer to the question asking for the identity of whoever had killed them. I don't know. The second snippet of voice was indistinct and much more open to misinterpretation than the first, in our opinion. How many men did Herb kill in this house? Zach asked next. The answer came quickly and was remarkably clear. Herb did it. Zach then claimed to feel a heavy pressure pushing down on his chest and said that his heart rate picked up. While it would be tempting to dismiss this as simple nervousness, the Ghost Adventures team had spent nights in many paranormal locations and do not seem to be easily intimidated. Well, why would they? They're all fucking fake fucks. They proved that by immediately heading outside into the pitch black woods to investigate further, they got results right away. Are you here? Zach said, calling out the name of a possible spirit entity. I'm here, came the immediate reply back from the SB7. You know, not one other fucking person. This is pissing me off. Not one other person who's done an investigation has this much happen to them. He's bullshit. Zach Bagans, it's always fake. He got caught faking I don't know how many different times different things that people will walk out on him and everything. Like idiots for letting him go there. Anyways, the three investigators made their way slowly into the middle of the woods, stopping as soon as another male voice said the words "found it." There can be no doubt that something very strange is going on among those trees where Herb Baumeister once deposited of the bodies of his victims. The question is exactly what? After venturing out into the woods a little after midnight, the Ghost Adventures team decided to relocate to the apartment where Joe had endured some terrifying experiences. After one of them expressed the opinion that the atmosphere up there was really negative, Zach sent fellow investigator Nick Groff upstairs to spend some time alone in the apartment, while the rest of them observed events using video cameras. Rather than simply sit there passively, Nick called out to the spirit of the young man who had disturbed Joe. By way of an answer, there came what sounded like a loud knock on one of the doors, probably Zach Bagans. During his time living in the apartment, Joe was plagued with late-night knocking sounds, most often on the exterior door. Was this a similar phenomenon or simply a part of the building structure cooling down and contracting? The former explanation seemed more likely, especially when the producers of the show play the sound of the single knock back and it contrasts it with the footage that they had shot earlier. When Joe was demonstrating how the door knocker used to sound, the two knocks were eerily similar. In an effort to rule out human trickery, Zach and fellow investigator Aaron immediately went outside to search the grounds. Just like Joe, they were unable to find a living, breathing human being walking around out there. Nick insisted that there was still something negative in the area of Joe's old bedroom. Venturing into the dark interior of the closet, Zach received a segment of a voice via the SB7 that seemed to say, "Getting close." This picture, by the way, is a picture. It's a higher up photo of, I think it's a drone, taking a picture of his home. Yeah. And then this is Herb with 12 victims. Oh my god, like they're boys. The one in the right-hand corner, it looks so little. And same with, oh my god. A thermal camera swept off the property, turned up no results, and the Ghost Adventures team began to pack up their equipment. Good. Ready to call it a night, but Fox Hollow Farm had one more card left to play. Team tech expert Billy was working alone in the apartment, breaking down the audio and video equipment that had been set up at the beginning of the investigation. On his way up there, Billy's flashlight had somehow managed to spontaneously dim itself down to nothing before springing back to life again. The infrared cameras also picked up what appeared to be an unusual light anomaly, moving slowly along the back of the wall of the kitchenette before working its way up toward the rafters. It remains unexplained to this day. I bet. The Ghost Adventures team was nice enough to send us a photo album of pictures from the shoot as a souvenir. My family and I were intrigued with some of the evidence that they had captured. As with so many things that happened at Fox Hollow Farm, what they experienced raised as many questions as it answered. Becky and I wanted to know more about the things that were going on, not only in our home itself, but also in the woods that surrounded it. Over the next few years, we would invite a number of psychic mediums, and paranormal investigators to the Fox Hollow Farm in order to give us their take on what they now knew was a haunting. So many that we have essentially lost count. Many told us that Herb Baumeister's spirit still lingered there, and others said that some of his victims also remained behind, especially in the area of the pool. A number of the mediums attempted to help these spirits cross over to whatever it is that comes after this life. However, how successful they were is difficult to say because, well, the paranormal activity at Fox Hollow Farm slowed down after Joe LeBlanc moved out. It still continues to this day. A shaman, I'd believe a shaman, okay, now you're doing good. A shaman told us of the existence of several Native American spirits. Oh boy. Which he said mostly keep to themselves in the woods at the back of the house. They are not connected to the murders in any way, but rather are said to have been there for much longer and are angry at the way the land has been treated by those who came after them. They have every right to be. More disturbing were the accounts of the two inhuman entities. One was an elemental, a form of a nature spirit that also lurked in the woods outside and only came out after dark. Joe had told me that on more than one occasion he had encountered a mysterious dark figure dashing from tree to tree when he was outside on the deer trails at night. There was a lot to take in, and we didn't know quite what to make of it. Then Vicki and I heard from a writer and a paranormal investigator named Richard Estep, which is the man that helped write this book. He wanted to fly out to Indiana from Colorado with a small team and spend several days and nights trying to unravel some of the mysteries of Fox Hollow Farm for himself. We are more than happy to let him try. What the hell was that? My cat. Now we're on Boots on the Ground. So, okay, now we're talking, now it's the author. The author. There's two authors. There's the owner of the house, but now we're on the author. So my name is Richard Estep. I've been a paranormal investigator for the past 24 years, spending time researching some of the world's most haunted locations and writing about them. None would affect me quite like Fox Hollow Farm. Before heading out to Indiana to test the mettle of this infamous place, I made sure to do my homework. The list of strange and bizarre occurrences that were said to have taken place at Fox Hollow Farm during the tenancy of Rob and Vicki Graves was both extensive and fascinating, and I recapped it for the members of my team prior to flying out there. Paranormal phenomenon had been experienced in many different parts of the house and grounds, but by far the most active area seemed to be the swimming pool and its associated pump room, which was directly connected. This should come as no surprise considering what took place in that pool itself. Like I said, I would have buried the damn thing. When people were swimming in the pool, they often heard knocking on the door. Whenever anybody went to check the door, nobody was ever found standing outside. Disembodied footsteps were regularly heard throughout the house. On 2 occasions, Vicki Graves saw the apparition of a young man wearing a red t-shirt. This took place during broad daylight each time. Rob had seen a shadow figure downstairs in the vicinity of the pool. One day he was in the pump room, carrying out a little routine maintenance on the pump when he felt something very distinctly touch his elbow. Whipping around, he saw the shadowy figure of a human being pass by them, disappearing through the pump room doorway. Despite being a practical, rational man, he no longer liked being in there alone. Inside the apartment, now the bedroom for one of Rob and Vicki's sons, the door had been known to rattle as though an invisible somebody was attempting to get out or in. This was where Joe LeBlanc, the Graves lodger, lived for 2.5 years and experienced a significant amount of paranormal activity, much of it rather disturbing. There was plenty to investigate, and I was excited at the prospect of putting boots on the ground at Fox Hollow Farm and seeing if the ghosts would come out and interact with my fellow paranormal investigators and me. We would use every trick in the book in order to try to gather evidence of the haunting, or, for that matter, to rule it out. Debunking is a large part of what we do as a team. Could some, if not all, of these supposed paranormal phenomena have a natural explanation? There was only one way to find out. My first visit to Fox Hollow Farm took place on November 2016. I took along a small group of investigators with me, all of whom I'd worked with before and trusted to help me get the job done. Jason, Sean, Aaron, Arthur, and Cletus. I don't know, that name always makes me giggle. Anyways, Jason had been a key part of my team for several years, along with his wife, Linda. Between them, they were the tech experts, never leaving home without at least 3 or 4 cases of the latest equipment. Reliable, dependable, and experienced, Jason was one of the key members of the Boulder County Paranormal Research Society. Sean had served for many years in the Air Force and now spent most of his time visiting haunted locations. He claimed to be a sensitive and usually reported getting psychic impressions and hearing voices during an investigation. I hadn't worked with him a great deal before then, but I thought that bringing a different perspective to things might be illuminating. Coming at it from a different angle was Erin, an investigator who worked primarily out of Colorado Springs. I wanted to work with her and her colleague Arthur for quite some time because their team had a good reputation, and I suspected that they could teach me some new techniques that would help me become a better paranormal investigator. It's good to bring fresh ideas to the table. Last, there was Cletus. While he was still relatively new to the field, what he lacked in knowledge and experience was made up by his boundless enthusiasm. He tended to take the approach of bull in a china shop, always tackling the problem head on. The 6 of us got an afternoon flight out from Colorado and flew into Indianapolis, landing just after dark. After picking up a pair of rental cars, we checked into our hotel, then hit the road bound for Westfield. No sooner had we reached the outskirts of town that heavens opened, dumping sheets of torrential rain. It was hammering on the roof of the car so loudly that we could barely hear ourselves talk. Visibility was down to just a few feet. We slowed down to a crawl, peering through the windshield in an attempt to make out the way ahead and trusting the sat-nav far more than I was comfortable with. The weather was so bad that we came close to missing the turn. I think that's it, Cletus said, pointing off to the left. I squinted, and sure enough, set back slightly from the road was a large wooden sign that read Fox Hollow Farm. Slamming on the brakes, we backed up a little, turned left, driving through an iron gate that Robert Graves had thoughtfully left open for us. The driveway itself was long and winding. We passed a stable block on the left, barely visible in the downpour, and a huge garage off to the right. Then there was the house itself. My first thought was horror movies take place on locations like this. Looking back at it now, with the benefit of the hindsight, I cannot help but wonder exactly how much of the growing sense of unease that began gnawing at my gut could be put down to foreknowledge prejudicing me. I had studied up on the background of Fox Hollow murders and the subsequent haunting, so the details were already well known to me when we parked our cars at the side of the house and dashed through the rain toward the front door. If I had visited the house while being completely unaware of a macabre story, would I still have felt so on edge? It's fascinating to experiment. Someday, I'd love to take somebody who knows absolutely nothing about Fox Hollow out to the place in order to see how they react to the dark and forbidding house. Rob greeted us at the door and ushered us inside. He was a polite and friendly man, and one who seemed completely unfazed by making his home in a place where so many young men had been murdered. Vicky and I knew what we were getting into. He shrugged when I asked him about it in a delicate a manner as I could manage. Not so much the ghosts, I have to admit, but even they don't bother us too much anymore. I had to admire him. I didn't know if I'd be able to sleep peacefully if I had lived in a house that came with the baggage that Fox Hollow had. There are stories out there about Fox Hollow Farm being cursed, something that has nothing to do with the murders. Before us, everybody but Vicky and I, knock on wood, had lost this property due to foreclosure. Oh. This is a hard place to own and to live in, he admitted. After a time, it really wears on you. And I don't mean the paranormal activity necessarily. I'm talking about the hours upon endless hours of upkeep and it takes to keep an estate like this running, not to mention how horribly expensive it is to keep it in a state of good repair. It's practically a full-time job and it takes it from me. It's work, it really is. It takes me 6 hours just to cut the grass, for goodness sake. There's a physical and an emotional toll. Later on, I would be able to attest to that. Every single time that I would see Rob or Vicky around the place, they were working on something Fox Hollow Farm related tasks or other tasks related to maintaining it. Coming from a man who grumbles at the prospect of spending 15 minutes cutting my own yard, I suddenly had a newfound sympathy for the Graves family. How would you like the grand tour, Rob asked, changing the subject. Considering all we had seen and read about the place, we were champing at the bit to learn more about it. Rob was kind enough to give us an extensive show and tell, taking us into every part of the house and telling us the stories that were associated with each area. All in all, it took around 90 minutes, and I would find out later that there was still a great deal of detail that he hadn't gotten to. Once the tour was over, it was time for us to get down to work. We decided to use the bar downstairs as our base of operations, partly because it was a fairly large open area with lots of comfortable seating and a variety of tables that we could use to lay our gear on. I was also very aware that the swimming pool seemed to be ground zero for the paranormal phenomenon that had plagued Fox Hollow in the past and wanted to be as close as possible. Our gear was all packed in a series of heavy plastic cases with foam lining to protect it from the tender mercies of the airline baggage handlers. Now we started to break it out, lying each piece of equipment on top of a table. EMF meters, static and video cameras, thermometers, laser grids, air ionization meters, motion sensors, spirit boxes, and a whole plethora of a kit that we hoped would help us gather evidence of any paranormal activity that did start to go down. The first order of business was to set up a laser grid in the area of the swimming pool, along with a series of locked-off cameras that, that we could completely set and forget. Just as the name implies, a laser grid is an electronic device that emits a series of brightly colored laser beams in the grid-like pattern. Paranormal investigators deploy them in the dark room in dark rooms, bouncing the grids off the far walls. If a shadow figure or something similar happens to walk across the room, it will break the beam and be visible to the camera. Or so goes this theory at any rate. Cletus placed the grid on a sturdy tripod at the shallow end of the swimming pool, covering the far wall with its net. I need a drink. Shh. You be girl. Cletus placed his grid on a sturdy tripod at the shallow end of the swimming pool, covering the far wall with its net. Then he put out a video camera alongside it, aligning the camera's field of vision with the back wall and the open door to the pump room, which was reputed to be extremely paranormally active. It began to rain again, getting steadily more intense as the night wore on, just a sort of stereotypical dark and stormy night to provide an atmospheric fear factor on a paranormal investigation. We were hanging out in the bar, loading fresh batteries into our equipment and generally shooting the breeze. After a while, Cletus went back into the pool room to check his locked-off video camera. As he did so, he glimpsed something moving for just a split second against the far wall of the pool, darting quickly from left to right and then back again. The bright green laser grid made it easy for him to pick up the shadowy figure out against the dark background. It caught his eye because it had broken a number of the laser beams. Cletus's video camera had been pointing at that direction and should have caught whatever it was. A number of intense white ground lights surrounded the pool room, their beams shining in through the tall glass windows. "Let me download that camera footage so we can see it on a bigger screen," Sean said. We all gathered around Sean's laptop eagerly as he took the footage and queued it up on screen. The video file began to play. The field of view showed the distant end of the pool, which was one big pool of a shadow due to the fact that we had switched the lights off in there. The glow from the outdoor ground light and the hundreds of green polka dots emanating from the laser grid illuminated the back wall. Nothing happened for a moment or two. Then all of a sudden, something dark passed across the top of the screen, disturbing the laser field momentarily before going back into the same direction from which it came. "Bloody hell," I breathed, echoing what everybody else was thinking. "What was that?" "Had to be one of two things," Jason said. "Either it was a shadow figure inside the pool room itself, or somebody was walking around outside and got in front of one of those lights." "Play it back again." So Sean did, and we watched the video a few more times. The only way to debunk it was we all agreed to try and recreate the effect ourselves. I sent one of the investigators to go outside and walk back and forth in front of the ground lights where the rest of us stood in the pool room and recorded it. The end result was pretty clear. When a flesh and blood human passed in front of the ground lights, they broke the beam and cast a shadow on the back wall of the pool room that looked exactly like the video footage Cletus had recorded. Somebody might have been wandering around out there. I shook my head, taking off my objections one by one. In the middle of a rainstorm on private property at this time of night? "What about Rob or a member of his family?" he countered. "I have to admit, you've got a point there. I think they went to bed already, but it can't hurt to check." Taking out my cell phone, I called Rob and asked him where he or any of his family, including the dogs, had been walking around outside in the past hour or so. He confirmed that they had not. "What about Erin?" As things turned out, at the time we had recorded the mysterious figure, she was still trying to navigate the unfamiliar streets of Carmel and Westfield and find a fast food restaurant that was still open at that time of night. We didn't have a reasonable explanation for the identity of the one-night late visitor, although a number of primarily nocturnal animals, such as foxes, deer, and other animal critters, lived in the woods out beyond the farm. Few of them ever approached the house itself, much less to within 4 or 5 feet of the structure. It was a mystery that we would never solve. Erin came back with an armful of food. Which we all gladly sat down to enjoy. She took the news concerning what she had missed with remarkably good grace. All things considered, if anything, it was only further whetted her appetite to get the bottom of the alleged haunting. Midnight came and went. All was quiet inside Fox Hollow Farm. Erin, Sean, and I elected to try an EVP session inside the pool room. Our fellow investigators went outside to make a circuit off the grounds. "Are you feeling anything in here?" I asked Sean, hoping that he would say yes. "Not a thing," Sean said. "Everything feels flat in here tonight." I tried to hide my disappointment. Nevertheless, he made a circuit of the pool when he reached the far side, close to the door of the pump room. He said that he was feeling something in that area. Deciding to trust his instincts, Erin and I walked carefully over to join him, taking a seat on a plastic chair with our backs up against the wall. There came the groans of 3 middle-aged paranormal investigators trying to get comfortable. Starting my digital voice recorder, I set it down on the edge of the pool, trying not to think about the number of poor unfortunate souls who had lost their lives in there. It was a somber prospect indeed. We made a point of switching off our phones in order to cut down on the electromagnetic signals. I began to call out to any spirits or entities that might be present, inviting them to communicate with us. I was using the utmost respect. Well, I didn't care one whit for the feelings of Herb Baumeister if he was still haunting the place. I didn't want to disrespect any of his victims if they were still present, and I dearly hoped that they weren't. As the session wore on, Aaron and I realized that Sean had been right. The atmosphere really was flat in here. Even somebody as lacking in psychic sensitivity as myself could tell that. None of our questions yielded any activity or answers in the form of EVPs. The three of us fell into an idle chit-chat, talking about some of our recent paranormal adventures and escapades. After a while, Sean began to hear indistinct, disembodied voices, though he found it impossible to pin down the location. Both he and Aaron said that they saw a shadow move at the base of the net and span the swimming pool, despite the fact that nothing was moving inside the room at the time. Were things beginning to pick up? Aaron pointed out that the digital thermometer was reading 66.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which raised wry smiles from Sean and me. The laser grid began to dim. No more than a few minutes later, it died completely. What the? Sean asked, confused. Those were fresh batteries right out of the packaging. Aaron and I exchanged a knowing look. Unexplained battery drains tend to plague paranormal investigators, and we have a love-hate relationship with them. On the one hand, such depletion tends to be an indicator that paranormal activity is about to pick up, using the missing energy as a power source. But on the other, it does make things very expensive when you're burning through pack after pack of AA batteries in the space of one night. Now we had good reason to be optimistic. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll read the rest of it tomorrow. See you guys in the comments.